Many thanks for making a date on the marketplace. Welcome back. Let's now settle over a very fair story. Banking consultant Nana Utue Champong says government's decision to establish a Financial Stability and Advisory Council is a step in the right direction. Last week, the president officially inaugurated the council with representation from various regulators of the financial services sector. Speaking on Joy News Business Edition of PM Express last night, Nana Utue Champong said he believes if this council had been implemented earlier, some financial crises such as the men's gold saga could have been prevented.
Sometimes when you talk of the financial system, many people think it's only the banking system.
The bank's true.
Yes,
very true.
You got the capital markets, you got the insurance, and then the latest kid on the block is the pensions. You know, so all four together. Now, the representatives on this council will therefore ensure that they talk to each other. And if they talk to each other, instead of living in fiefdoms, you know, then you cannot play one against the other. Because if you take men's gold, for instance, initially it was to be caught by the Deposit Taking Institutions Act because they were alleged to have been taking deposits. And then quickly they changed to sell collectibles, which is some investment. And so they moved from being under BOG to becoming under SEC. You know. Now, if the council has been there, then it would not have been that easy to make that move. So I think those are some of the things that we need to, and especially now that we have bank assurance, where banks are giving insurance, or they are also linking up with insurance companies. It also means that we need a system to be able to make sure that we know what each of them is doing. So this Financial Stability Advisory Council is a good move, and although theirs is not backed by law as the fiscal one, but still they will have some, because they are advisory. I hope that they will be able to give the right advice and ensure that we don't get people getting through the system as men's gold.
Now, President Akufo-Addo has reiterated his commitment to fighting corruption within the oil and gas industry. He also highlighted his insistence that rigorous oil and gas activities in the country's upstream petroleum sector do not lead to oil revenue leakages into the pockets of politicians. In his State of the Nation address yesterday, the president also announced the interest shown by some major oil companies, including BP and China National Oil Company. Let's take a listen to this.
The oil industry, unfortunately, has a reputation for corruption. Since the discovery of oil in our country, there's been heightened anxiety amongst our people that we do not fall into the same trap of the oil money benefiting individual officials to the detriment of the state and the general public. On the fight against corruption in the oil industry, of contracts on which all the petroleum agreements signed by the government have been published. This provides a platform for citizens to scrutinize the oil contract signed by government and accords with international call for contract transparency. We've also signed the General Petroleum Regulations, which provide for the disclosure of beneficial ownership information of companies operating in Ghana's oil and gas industry. This will ensure that people do not hide in the shadows to appropriate oil blocks to themselves at the expense of the citizens of our country. The interest of major oil companies in Ghana has become dramatic. Today, oil companies such as the American giant ExxonMobil and the Norwegian conglomerate Aker have signed petroleum exploration agreements with Ghana. Through the launch of the Ghana oil and gas licensing rounds of 2018, the bidding process for the allocation of new petroleum rights to prospective investors, the first such exercise in our history. Other global players such as BP, China National Oil, Offshore Oil Corporation, and Total have expressed interest in coming to Ghana.
All right, so these are some of the impressive records that the president touted about Ghana's oil and gas industry. But for now, we have on the line energy expert Ishmael Jokumhene to tell us what exactly the president means by these impressive records and if he thinks these are possible achievement. Ishmael, you're welcome to the marketplace. Good afternoon, Ishmael.
Good afternoon, Emmanuel.
All right. Now, I don't know whether you listened and watched the President's State of the Nation address yesterday, but if you didn't, then the President is actually touting impressive performance of the sector and also insisting that he is going to ensure that corruption is not associated with the oil and gas industry. For now, do you think that the oil and gas sector, has stayed or has shied away from corrupt practices?
Well, let me greet your listeners and your viewers. I think basically what the president was talking about or is talking about is the result of the EMP Act, that's Exploration and Production Act, that we all fought for. The publication of contracts. It's an explicit provision in the Act, and also the beneficiary ownership thing that he talked about. So right from day one, we managed to put in place some mechanisms that would help ensure that corruption and all these dubious things that are associated with the oil industry are dealt with and not allowed to fester in our petroleum industry. So those essential building blocks and all these mechanisms are in place. I guess the challenge will be how to ensure that people don't bypass it and we are allowed to run the sector in a transparent manner.
Now, Ishmael, we've had situations where the Public Interest Accountability Committee, PIAC, has raised questions and posted contradictory reports of oil revenue usage. Now, if these laws are there, we still have these discrepancies going on. Do you think that the PRMA, for instance, is being looked to the letter?
Okay, so I think what the president talked about had to do with the upstream, basically the contracting side. There are challenges with the PRMA, and that obviously the amendments that were passed a few years after the implementation of the Act didn't tackle all the issues. The revenue, it has always been problematic, especially the way the ABFA has been utilized. The fact that we spread it thinly, and the number of projects that are very difficult to trace and link them directly to the oil revenue. That certainly we need to improve upon that. How we manage the revenue is critical, and that's how come after 10 years or so we don't really have anything clear thing that we can put our finger on and say that this is why we use the oil money, the close to 3.5 billion that we received so far. There's clearly an area that we need to look at, but I think some of the achievements that the president talked about or some of the systems that we put in place were clearly at the upstream side. When we collect all the revenues, we need to make sure that we put them to the best use. So maybe it's about time we take a critical look at the PRMA to make sure that its intended objectives are being achieved. So far, yes, we've managed to sort of ensure that we know how much money goes into the budget, but how that money is utilized, I'm not sure we can speak volumes of that. There's still a lot of room for improvement.
All right, so like you mentioned earlier, the president alluded to the establishment of a petroleum registry and also, initiatives like the beneficiary ownership. Now, would these two initiatives, for instance, be enough to curtail or prevent corrupt practices in the industry upstream?
I hope so. I have always maintained that publication of already signed contracts would, even though they connote and suggest that we are being transparent, I think it's too late in the day for contracts to be signed before once it's signed, and most of these contracts are legally binding. If it's subject to scrutiny, we can only punch holes and say that we could have done it better. Okay, but we can't change anything. I don't know of any contract if we discover that we were shortchanged. So publication is not enough. We will prefer citizens being given the opportunity to comment on some of these draft agreements before they are signed into contract. But I mean, it's a step in the right direction, but the preference would have been for us elsewhere. I think in Brazil and places like that, the citizenry we'll have the opportunity to scrutinize some of these agreements and some of the portions that we don't feel in the collective interest of the country. We point them out, and then the Parliament will have to then take another look at it. In Ghana, we know how these agreements are reviewed. Sometimes is the companies whose agreements are being considered who sponsor parliamentarians to off-site meetings to approve these agreements. So in terms of the scrutiny, I'm not too sure we get that detailed scrutiny. So contract publication of the contract, it's a step in the right direction, but we think we should take it a step further, where the citizen will be allowed to have a say or take a look at it, and I mean the think tanks and the experts will have an opportunity to review and state their positions on the agreement. But it's a step in the right direction. As to whether it will entirely eradicate corruption, I doubt, because I think even in America there are some of these dubious deals in the industry. But I think it's another step in the right direction that needs to be applauded, but we can still do more.
Many thanks for your time and your input into this discussion. Ishmael Ejikumhene is an energy expert. Still within the industry, Talo Ghana has held a graduation ceremony for 24 HR professionals as part of its maiden HR mentoring program. Talo says the program forms part of efforts to increase local content in the oil and gas sector. Charles Aiti was at the event and now reports.
Talo Ghana is intensifying its priority on local content in the upstream oil and gas sector. To this end, 24 human resource professionals graduated in a higher impact capacity building project in the oil firm's maiden HR mentoring program. Irene Asari is the program director, HR and business services at Talo Ghana. She tells Joy Business her outfit will be investing heavily in human resource to ensure Ghanaians could take up roles in the company currently occupied by expatriates.
It aligns very much with our shared prosperity agenda. We believe that although we're in the oil and gas industry, we believe that human resource, human capital is very important, and we've all heard of it being our greatest asset, which is people. And therefore, what another place to start with looking after and developing the people behind the people. And so really it very much aligns with Talo's agenda. We will be, as Talo, announcing the second edition of the HR mentoring program, and that is due to start in April. So we see this as a long journey of development for human resource professionals, which I'm really excited about.
President of the Institute of Human Resource Management Practitioners, Edward Kwapon, expressed confidence in Talo's initiative.
The purpose is to ensure that we build capacity, we add value, and ensure high standards of practice. And so from the point of view of Talo Ghana Limited and the point of view of IHRMP, we seek to up our game in the practice of HR in this country.
In all, outstanding graduates of the Media Mentorship Program received awards in various fields of achievement.
Now, the IMF board is set to meet to review on March 20th to review the country's program performance before approving its exit. This was after the IMF staff completed its final on how government has fared under the program. George Wiafe has more.
The IMF board will have the final verdict as to whether the country can indeed exit the program, based on the assessment carried out by the IMF staff during their visits to the country. Now, if Ghana passes the review, then the board will request for the exit to be approved. The staff had to combine what they described as the 7th and 8th review to finally close the page on Ghana. They have appraised government on measures taken to try and stabilize the economy. And Alisa Fidelino has been speaking about this at a media engagement in Accra before they left for Washington, D.C.
In the fund jargon, only the executive board of the IMF can actually conclude reviews because it's a legal decision that the executive board needs to take. But we have a mandate to come and seek agreement with the authorities, and once we have reached agreements, then we can say we have reached understandings ad referendum to allow considerations of the reviews so that the reviews can be concluded.
She also described the program as successful, looking at how government has managed the process.
If we only look at the success of the program in terms of the targets that have been met, That's a very partial view. Of course, we use them to make sure that the certain path is being maintained and so on. But I think really the success of the program is ultimately the commitment of the authorities to continue on the path of adjustment and reform.
Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta on his part noted that they are committed to prudent spending post the completion of the program.
I think Ghanaians should be confident about what is coming. We've also committed ourselves to some major restructuring of our revenue authorities so that the issue of revenue mobilization will be something that we take care of coming into the future.
The country in 2015 signed the IMF program to help restore policy credibility. Government, however, had some 7 prior actions it has to work on before the board meets on Ghana on March 20.
Now, some health practitioners and medical owners are pushing for the review of the current laws to allow them market their operations. According to some of the practitioners, the restriction is having an impact on their profits and growth. CEO of St. John's Hospital and Family Fertility Center, Dr. Nana Ayu Afriye, says reviewing these laws would rather help healthcare delivery in the country.
Because in the Act 857, there is no provision for this.
In accordance with the professional codes and ethics guidelines of the Dental and Medical Council of Ghana, medical practitioners do not have the right to advertise their operations to seek professional advantage. But for the Chief Executive of St. John's Hospital and Fertility Center, Dr. Nana Ayu Afriye, this instruction has contributed to stunted growth of the health sector. He has therefore called on the council to review the guidelines to reflect the realities of modern business practices aimed at improving customer service delivery.
A lot of practitioners are being produced now. Government can't absorb all of them. The private sector must come in. But if you can let them advertise and they cannot let people know what they do, they won't invest in it. You are stifling the growth of the health sector by regulatory restrictions. It is absolutely not the way out now. So obsolete since 1975. What you're talking about, policy is not static, policy is dynamic. You have to change because people are changing, expectations are changing, the needs are changing, and therefore you are keeping something of ethics of 1975 in 2019. No way.
Dr. Afriye also advised other health practitioners to desist from financially exploiting their patients.
Any patient, any doctor who take advantage of information, we call it information asymmetry. If you have information and he doesn't have, you want to manipulate and have supply and use demand, and the doctor-patient keep coming and coming, you get a bad name because currently the practice of healthcare is you have ALOS, an average length of stay to be a very few days. The good hospital is the one that the patient comes in and admit the patient within 2-3 days, the person is gone. Yes, it's not the one that stays for about a week. Hey, you decrease confidence in you.
The CIMG public lecture, which was led by Dr. Nana Ayu Afriye, was on the topic, the role of marketing in healthcare management. President of the CIMG, Kojo Mata, says the topic was carefully chosen to urge all businesses to consider marketing as a vital tool for their operations.
We believe marketing is a borderless profession and it runs through every sector of our lives. And whether it is in waste management, whether it is in fish farming, whether it is in banking.
All right, so on the marketplace Friday, and we would like to know what actually pertained on the stock market. And a total of 25,582 shares corresponding to a market value of 103,757.21 Ghana cedis were traded on the Ghana Stock Exchange as of trading ended yesterday. Now, research analyst Bertha Atudiga has joined me in the studio to tell us some more updates. Bertha, good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you
very
much, Emmanuel.
What's the details so far?
Well, the market has been a bit bearish this week with the exception of the block trade that we had on midweek with Societe Generale, which has high demand. Okay. And we're expecting the price of Societe Generale to actually go up. And one surprising thing that has also happened on the market is that Total, somewhere last week, we were looking at its recorded negative year-to-date returns. But as we speak now, within the last 10 trading days, Total has added 1 Ghana cedis 8 pesos to its share price to close at 4 cedis 30 pesos. And as I speak now, on the market, there's still demand for some Total shares. We have about 800 shares going for 4 cedis 50 pesos, which means that the price of Total is likely to go up, and there's another one that is 200 shares at 4 cedis 30 pesos. So there's a possibility of us seeing Total shares going up and that of Societe Generale because of the demand for the shares on the stock market. The composite index, on the other hand, that's on the stock market by close of trade yesterday. We saw it going down by 0.62 points. That's 0.02% by close of day. It has a year-to-date loss of 2.99%. The 4-week return is negative 0.81, and it's recording a 1-week loss, a 1-week gain of 0.4%. And the financial stock index is also recording a 1-week loss of 0.12%. It went down by 0.06% by close of day yesterday. Has a 4-week loss of 0.18% and a year-to-date loss of 1.59%. So basically, we're expecting the market going forward next week to be a bit bearish. That is, we're not expecting trades to be very significant as we have seen. But one factor that we're looking at is when the financials are being released by the companies that are listed on the stock market, we could see some trades going on, significant trades going on, and that's what we saw with Total. Total released their financials and it was positive, and we've seen the impact on the stock market with the share price going up in the last 10 days by 1 cedi 8 pesos, and we should expect that with some other equities as well. If the financials are being released, it will actually give some confidence to investors to invest more on the stock market.
Any updates on the stock market elsewhere in Africa?
Yes, the Nairobi Securities Exchange, Kenel Kobo is a listed equity on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, is being suspended for 12 days, and there was a takeover by another a French company, and they are expected to do some reconciliation. So for the next 12 days till 11th of March, we wouldn't see trading activities going on in this equity. And the Nairobi Securities Exchange happens to be one of the best returning markets in Africa. We have the Ghana Stock Exchange having negative returns, but the Nairobi Securities Exchange has 10.33% year-to-date return.
Many thanks for your time. Bertha Atubiga is a research analyst from Gold Coast Securities, briefing us on the developments on the stock markets, Ghana Stock Exchange, as well as the Kenya Securities Exchange. And on that note, we wrap up this afternoon's edition of The Marketplace. My name is Emmanuel Abuaji. We have enjoyed the weekend. Let's meet again on Monday for more developments in the world of business.